Fenyx, fighting with all her might, had nearly reached Olympus on her quest to defeat Typhon, the dreaded god destroyer. But first, she would have to plunge into the Forge Lands. Once home to Hephaestus, god of fire, hammer, anvil, and forge, these were now godless lands. Scorched, laid to waste. What was not dead was dying. Chaos reigned. For here, monsters roamed free.
Can you not tell this story like I wasn't just there?
Zeus!
I was literally just there 2 weeks ago, and even if I wasn't, though I was, I'd be listening to your story for days!
It's called dramatic effect.
It's called Where's My Skip Button?
Fine. Cue title.
Ubisoft Quebec presents the video game formerly known as Gods and Monsters.
It is actually pronounced Ubisoft.
The French.
Looks like a rift in the ground. Time to jump in and see what's inside.
This mortal has no sense of safety. Jumps right into holes like a rabbit or a tomb.
Zeus! No lawsuits here, please!
I had the chance to preview Immortals Fenyx Rising, the game formerly known as Gods and Monsters. It's a more whimsical video game than we usually get from Ubisoft, the publisher and developer of the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Tom Clancy video game franchises. They've also made some stuff like Rayman and some other 2D side-scrollers, but this is the first big open-world game from the company that really sort of targets a slightly younger audience. I've been calling it something of a mix between The Legend of Zelda and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I think the Odyssey blueprint is more apparent, but just the younger age group that this game is targeted at, the emphasis on platforming and puzzles, bloodless combat, all of that sort of reminds me a bit of The Legend of Zelda and some of the games, especially like Breath of the Wild. The formula here is very similar to Ubisoft's other big open-world games, though more similar to Origins and Odyssey than past Assassin's Creed games. In my time with the preview build of the game, I explored one section of a much larger map, fighting a number of different enemy types, discovering hidden loot, mixing up potions, and platforming through dungeons that the game calls vaults. These are basically platforming arenas that you make your way through with spike traps and fire traps, enemies to fight, puzzles involving blocks that you have to set on different panels to activate or shoot arrows to send a platform your way. Usually there's some sort of boss at the end and some sort of reward. You play as Fenyx, a hero whose story is being narrated throughout the game by Zeus and Prometheus. They carry on some conversation talking about what you've done, interrupting one another, making jokes, and breaking down the fourth wall. We get joking references to Ubisoft and how to pronounce it. We, at one point, hear that Fenyx remembers some area she's been to, and the gods joke around that she must have been privy to the leaked demo of the game. So it's very aware that it is a game. I think it was pretty funny, at least the parts that I heard. It's not too overbearing. You'll hear Prometheus and Zeus joke around, tell this story, and then they'll fade to the background. At times during the demo, they would cut off when you'd enter a new area like a vault and then pick back up, and it can be a little jarring. But overall, it wasn't annoying. It was pretty funny. Other people may not enjoy it as much, so your mileage may vary with this. But I enjoyed the more lighthearted and whimsical nature of the game. Players will need to solve quests, such as lighting Zeus's forge by setting chunks of coal on fire and then tossing them into 4 different openings before proceeding on to a boss fight. There are many puzzles scattered throughout the game. Some require you to find little orbs and set them up to match a constellation. One puzzle had me use a magical arrow to sort of guide it through a number of rings and then eventually light a fire in a statue's mouth. So there's a lot of different kinds of puzzles, whether that's platforming and testing your reflexes and timing, or using your various magical abilities, or simply mind puzzles where you figure out how to find an orb and unlock a new area to get to that orb, and then use that orb and the other orbs to unlock another orb and finally get enough orbs to finish the constellation. So there is apparently quite a lot of variety. Another thing that reminded me a bit of The Legend of Zelda, especially Breath of the Wild, was the fact that you have mounts in this game, and you can find wild horses and tame them by creeping up behind them as carefully as possible. Very, very Breath of the Wild-like. Platforming occurs largely in vaults, but there will be platforming throughout the game. You can climb walls, you can fly, although it's more of a gradual fall. You use stamina to cast spells, to fly, to fight, and when you run out of stamina, you can't do those things. Combat is all about light and heavy attacks. You've got your light attack button, your heavy attack button, and then laying waste to enemies with powerful magical abilities. These include spikes that come out of the ground for an area of effect attack, a large hammer that you can deal a bunch of damage with, another power that lets you zip up to attack flying harpies, and I'm sure there's a number of other powers out there that I never got a chance to play in my 2 hours with the game. It plays out fast and furious, with Fenyx generally tearing through her foes with powerful swings of her axe and magical abilities. It's kind of like a more magical, colorful, fantastical version of the combat from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and another game I previewed, which is the new Assassin's Creed Ragnarok. There were several different difficulty options shown in the preview build, but I could only choose normal or easy. I went with normal and never found the game particularly challenging, except when I ran out of potions and got into a fight with a colossal Cyclops. It turns out that potions are pretty much essential to this game. If you want to win, if you want to beat especially larger, more difficult enemies, you'll need these to replenish your health and stamina, and there's also attack and defense potions. Without all your potions, you can still use the consumables that Fenyx uses to craft potions, but they only heal a tiny amount. They only replenish a tiny amount of stamina, so they're really pretty useless in a tough fight. It's much better to go with potions. And really, I was struck by the difference in my ability to take down the Cyclops. He killed me really quickly when I was out of potions, and I went and brewed up a bunch more and came back and just tore through him in just a minute. Basically this game relies a great deal on your ability to use your magical powers and heal yourself and buff your attacks and buff your defenses.
Wait, I feel like I've been here before, but everything looked more purple.
Is she kidding? That's so 2019.
I think she's seen the leaked demo.
If you hadn't brought the internet to mortals, none of this would have happened.
Don't blame this on me. I've been chained to a rock.
Well, how was I supposed to Google myself without it?
Basically, Immortals Fenyx Rising is a more whimsical approach to Ubisoft's trademark open-world games. It takes a few cues from Zelda Breath of the Wild. The vaults are a bit like Zelda-style dungeons, though generally simpler than a lot of those games, Breath of the Wild notwithstanding. The world is more cartoony and less gritty and realistic than the Assassin's Creed games, or really most of Ubisoft's other games, other than things like Rayman. I spent a little over 2 hours with the game, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's nothing groundbreaking or revolutionary, but it's cleverly written, and action, puzzles, and platforming are all engaging. I think a somewhat harder difficulty setting will make it more fun, at least for me, so I'm glad that option is there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I assume it's just making enemies a little harder to take down, maybe making your attacks a little weaker, but there's always the possibility that a harder difficulty will mean a more interesting challenge. In the end, I only played a couple hours, so I can't lay down any kind of verdict on this game, but I'm excited to play more of it, and I'm glad to see Ubisoft take on projects like this. I am not convinced that it needs to be quite so much like Assassin's Creed Odyssey with the RPG elements, the looting and leveling up and all those things. I guess that's because personally I want more straightforward action-adventure games, even open-world games, where you find a sword and that sword is special for reasons beyond just better stats. I don't think that I appreciate that sort of loot grind as much as some gamers do, and I prefer more story-driven, adventure-driven action-adventure games. But I'm not too worried because this is a fun, pretty exciting game. There's a lot of exploration. It's very pretty to look at. Flying around and solving puzzles and fighting monsters and just following this story is a pretty neat experience. I think it'll be especially nice for younger gamers, but I think it's certainly not intended only for younger gamers. So I'm looking forward to playing the whole thing, or at least a larger chunk of it than I've played so far, and I think you should definitely give it a look when it does come out, I believe, later this year. Thanks for watching, and just stay tuned and watch the rest of this video for more gameplay, and like and subscribe if you want to. All right, peace.
The gods failed this world, but I am perfection. Join me for the war!
What is this? It smells like honey, and the first day of spring, and my first kiss, all rolled into one.
Phoenix got into the ambrosia too? Prometheus!
You worried, Zeus, about losing this bet?
Please, she can't use it anyway.
Yet.